regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thank you so much for being a part of another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is good to have you with us today. Also good to have with us Stephen Gutowski, the Washington Free Beacon, who's going to be joining us momentarily. We have the story of a 12-year-old girl, middle school student in Kansas, who was arrested on a felony charge for this. A finger gun. Yes, that she allegedly pointed at 4 other students and then herself. And then the police were called and they took her away in handcuffs. Meanwhile, same school district. 2 kids brought real guns to school in their backpacks and they're facing misdemeanor charges. Yeah, finger gun a felony, real gun a misdemeanor. Tell me we just need another gun control law or two? How about we work on the existing laws? We'll get to that, by the way, as well. We've got another outrageous criminal injustice story for you, also from the Kansas area. But right now, I do want to get to our guest, Stephen Gutowski, who has a big story at the Washington Free Beacon today. Election day coming up in Virginia here very soon. And as it turns out, Ralph Northam, the governor of Virginia, who is not up for election this year. Well, first of all, he's not up for re-election. Virginia governor served 1 term. Attorney General Mark Herring, he's also not up for election this year. As it turns out, Virginia Democratic leaders turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal funds that would have directly been spent to reduce gun-related violence and violent crime in the state of Virginia. They turned it down, apparently because that meant that they would have had to cooperate with ICE. Is this putting politics above public safety? Well, again, we'll talk about it with Stephen Gutowski of the Washington Free Beacon. In fact, let's do that right now. Stephen, it is good to talk with you today, sir. Appreciate you joining us on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
You bet. So we're less than a month away from Election Day in Virginia, and gun control is shaping up, according to the polling anyway, to be a big issue for voters. You got a story, though, that I think is fascinating. I think every voter in Virginia needs to be aware of this, because we saw Governor Ralph Northam, we saw Attorney General Mark Herring, and virtually every Democrat in the state of Virginia come out in favor of all kinds of new gun control proposals. As it turns out, Governor Northam and the state of Virginia has turned down, as you say, hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal money that could have been spent directly combating violent crime and violent criminals in the state of Virginia. They turned that money down.
Yeah, that's right. The Office of the Attorney General oversees the agency which had previously received this federal grant. It's the Project Safe Neighborhoods grant, which goes towards all sorts of different gun violence prevention programs, from violence interruption programs to increasing gun crime prosecutions, and all sorts of other community outreach programs, and has been effective in the state of Virginia, according to the Office of the Attorney General in the previous report on the last grant that they administered. They saw a sizable decrease in violent crime and murder in Norfolk, Virginia, because of this exact program, but they decided that they did not want to accept the money this time in late December of 2018. Because apparently there was an issue where they did not want to certify that they would cooperate with federal immigration enforcement.
Yeah.
If they requested, information from them, as required by federal law. So essentially they gave up over $650,000 in the form of 2 grants. And instead that money was shifted outside of the Virginia government to a nonprofit group who currently administers it now, and obviously doesn't have access to the same sort of resources and authority that the Virginia state government does.
Right. Although what Northam spokeswoman Elena Yermansky told you in an email, quote, these federal dollars continue to flow to communities to help local law enforcement prevention and reentry. This ongoing program is one way we work, she says, to reduce violent crime. The governor has made it clear he supports common sense gun safety measures to fully address the emergency of gun violence in the Commonwealth. Well, first of all, this isn't the way that the governor's office is working to reduce violent crime, because the governor's office said we don't, and the attorney general's office said we don't want this money. It's not like
Right.
Ralph Northam told Mark Herring, hey, take this grant money, certify we'll cooperate with ICE. This is playing politics with public safety.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they, it's hard for the governor to claim any sort of ownership of these grants now that they've completely disowned them from state government control, and now it's relied on Virginia's reliance on a non-government nonprofit to administer this money. So, his statement seems a bit, interesting.
To say the least, yeah. You also spoke with Virginia House Majority Leader Todd Gilbert, who said that that the Attorney General and the governor are, quote, willing to walk away from grant funding for a program that's been proven to work. He says they're willing to put politics above saving lives. These programs work, he said. They save lives, particularly those of young African American men. As you note, Project Safe Neighborhoods, this is not a new program. This has been around for at least going back to the Bush administration. 2004, I think, is when I first became aware of Project Safe Neighborhoods. But the idea even goes back further to Project Exile, which actually started in the 1990s in Richmond, Virginia. And as you say, there are a lot of programs that are affiliated with Project Safe Neighborhoods. But the big thrust is, if you catch a felon in possession of a firearm, and this individual has a violent criminal history, rather than pursue a case like this in state court where they might get a slap on the wrist or not much time behind bars at all, refer these cases to the U.S. attorney, prosecute them at the federal level, and put these individuals who are known dangerous offenders, put them away for as long as you possibly can. And when those violent offenders are off of the streets, these streets are safer. It's targeted enforcement. Again, it's not going after law-abiding legal gun owners. It's actually ensuring that those who are violating federal law, and again, typically Project Safe Neighborhoods prosecutions involve individuals who have a violent criminal past. So if you're, arrested with a white collar crime or something, you're probably not going to be the subject of a Project Safe Neighborhoods investigation. But if police, keep seeing you time and time again, they're arresting you for assault, they're arresting you for, attempted murder, things of that nature. This is an opportunity to put those individuals away in a federal penitentiary where there's no early release, there's no, probation or parole or time off for a good behavior. You're doing the vast majority of the sentence that is handed down to you.
Yeah, that's right. And in addition to that, they've also expanded the program to include, other fairly uncontroversial initiatives like violence interruption programs and working with state gang suppression units, things like that, as well as I think they just announced that they were going to include a domestic violence initiative inside of Project Safe Neighborhoods as well. Recently, and where the focus is on making sure that convicted domestic abusers are unable to, access firearms, or are, prosecuted for possessing firearms when they're not, legally allowed to. So it's fairly, my understanding of it has always been it's a fairly uncontroversial program.
Yeah.
Something that has enjoyed a great deal of bipartisan support, and even the governor's comments to this story seem to indicate that he supports the program itself. For whatever reason, I guess they just didn't think certifying that they would share documents about, the people who've been caught up in this program, criminals, about their immigration status with ICE was too much for them to accept this money. So, it seems like that's the calculation that was made here.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because you don't hear a lot of talk about sanctuary cities in Virginia. You certainly don't usually hear Virginia referred to as a sanctuary state. And this was not something that I remember the attorney general or the governor announcing, like, hey, we're rejecting these federal funds because we're going to stand up to ICE. I don't recall any headlines like that at all. So it seems like this was, sort of a very quiet a move here by the governor and the attorney general.
No, they didn't announce it. Certainly this was something that they did at the administrative level and didn't seek publicity for. So I will say that Northam did veto a bill that was designed to outlaw sanctuary cities in Virginia. So he does have a public stance on that particular issue, and it seems that might shed some light on this situation as well.
Absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting to see, what kind of impact this might have on voters. As I mentioned, Election Day coming up in less than a month in Virginia. And, as you and I have talked before, the stakes here are high when it comes to the Second Amendment. There are basically 13 or 14 seats that anti-gun advocates are targeting. They don't have to win every one of them. They only have to flip a couple of seats in the House of Delegates and a couple of seats in the state Senate. And there would be an anti-gun legislative majority to go along with the anti-gun governor, the anti-gun attorney general. And then, Stephen, Virginia could all of a sudden start looking a lot like California or New Jersey in terms of the gun control bills that we're talking about in the state house.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And, this story is particularly interesting because gun control was the thing that the three top Democrats in the state, Herring, Northam, and Fairfax all appeared at a press conference for the first major public effort that they had put together after their individual scandals, where Herring and Northam had admitted to wearing blackface, and Fairfax was accused of sexual assault. The first thing they did was announce they wanted new gun control measures.
Yeah. So, how about that? And meanwhile, that money going to local nonprofits because they don't want the federal dollars they ought to address gun violence. Stephen Gutowski with the Washington Free Beacon. Again, sir, it is great talking with you today. Congratulations, by the way. I don't think we've been able to talk about this, but at the Gun Rights Policy Conference recently, you received a very, very cool award, right? The Gun Rights Defender of the Year award? Yeah.
They gave me that award for my reporting over the last year, and I was very appreciative for that. It's very nice.
Oh, I think it is very well deserved, my friend. It's just a good honor, and I'm glad that you got it. I appreciate you joining us on the program, and hope that you and I get a chance to connect again very soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. Stephen Gutowski, the Washington Free Beacon, with us here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company.